The Overwatch League has come a long way since February, and with the 2019 regular season now done and dusted, let's take a moment to review, reminisce, and remember just how this year played out. With 8 new expansion franchises and 12 returning teams hungry to claim this season as their own, we had no shortage of questions heading into the first week of this season. Could Runaway, now the Vancouver Titans, prove that they were in fact owl level despite fanboy triggering delusion? Would the New York Excelsior be able to regroup and reclaim the league as their own? Could teams like the Florida Mayhem and the Shanghai Dragons, who got trounced last season, make up the deficit and actually be true competitors? And perhaps most importantly, what the hell would GOATs look like at the Tier 1 level?
And honestly, we did not get clear answers very quickly to most of these questions right off the bat. Stage 1 was a stage of parity and chaos where seemingly any team could beat any other depending on the day. The GOATs play shown by many of the teams was middling at best, and certainly didn't gel well with many of the returning teams. The only exception to this confusing stage, though, was the Vancouver Titans, who smashed their way through the start of Season 1. And yet through the pandemonium, we found some incredibly entertaining Overwatch, a lot of which is worth going back to watch before the season playoffs begin.
It all starts with the first match of the season, lafon, the long-awaited Grand Finals rematch between the Philadelphia Fusion and the London Spitfire. Definitely not the highest level of play we saw in GOATs, but these teams definitely have a bone to pick with each other, and it shows throughout the match.
Of course, we also have to bring up the 0-40 from last season and the much-awaited Shanghai Dragons' first ever win as a franchise. Despite the addition of Gamsu at the last minute before Stage 1 for the Dragons, he was able to lead the former Kongdu Panthera roster to their first ever OWL-level win. All the more poetic it was against Gamsu's former squad in the Boston Uprising.
The next match to go back and watch isn't so much a match to watch as it was a map. The Atlanta Reign versus the Paris Eternal would produce a highlight to end all highlights on Hollywood, and if you only go back and watch a single map from what we recommend, go back and watch that one. You'll know it when you see it.
It makes sense it was on Hollywood too, right? As they say, the outrageous will happen there all the time. Staying with the outrageous though, even with the Titans absolutely thrashing the opposition throughout Stage 1, it was the Chengdu Hunters constantly defying the meta that gave them their first real test. Chinese Overwatch has been promised at the start of the season, and here the Hunters finally delivered. It wasn't quite enough to beat the Titans, but it certainly did make them sweat.
Now, while those are the matches to go back and watch from Stage 1, it doesn't necessarily tell the whole tale of the first quarter of the season. To my mind, the two threads from Stage 1 are neatly intertwined. First, that Runaway are in fact OWL level, and second, that GOATs was here to stay. Calling the Titans the best in the world at the 3-3 composition is an understatement at this point in time. And in any other world, the plays Bumper tried to pull off would be considered feeding, but instead the Titans took it as strength and rode the aggression to become the unstoppable juggernaut of the North.
But for every high, Paul, there is a low, and those two are neatly intertwined. The new pickups to OWL were on the whole more effective, and analysts and returning league teams were both almost completely inaccurate at guessing who would come out on top. Nowhere was this more evident than the "we are 0-7" record that the LA Valiant would hold after Stage 1. For a franchise who had looked incredibly strong in the inaugural season, this was a quick blow to return them to reality.
Stage 1 finished off quite neatly with the stage playoffs, and man, was the final piece arguably some of the best Overwatch to ever be played. In the stage finals, we had the Vancouver Titans versus the San Francisco Shock, and they delivered a match for the ages. A first to 4 map wins that went all the way to 7 maps before the Titans eventually triumphed. A true masterclass in high-level GOATs versus GOATs play.
And it's tough not to wax poetic about it. This match goes down as one of the best in Overwatch history, alongside the Stage 1 finals from Season 1, the Apex Season 3 Grand Finals, or the Contenders Korea Season 2 Grand Finals. It's in some mighty rare territory.
If anyone can watch that match and tell me that GOATs is boring, you owe Super and Bumper $20 each. That's just what the rule is at this point.
I hope you got some sleep after catching up on stage 1, because stage 2 was an absolute gong show, and I love it.
Wait, a what?
Okay, so apparently it's come to my attention that the word gong show is not used elsewhere, but it means something that's a bit of a clown fiesta as a Canadianism.
LaFon, if anything's a gong show, it's anytime you and I show up somewhere, but we've barely mentioned the stage 1 runners up, and boy, if they didn't come alive in the second quarter of the season. Shock promised after Season 1 that they were building for the future, and they more than reaped the benefits in Season 2. Riding the momentum from a near Stage 1 victory, they were here to claim Stage 2 that they knew to be theirs.
Before we get into the matches to watch though, it must be mentioned that the meta doesn't really much shift here, as it's still mostly goats. Sombra does make an appearance for the first time, and dishonest as she is, it still throws a couple of teams for a loop.
The first real contested series of Stage 2 comes from the most classic rivalry in the Overwatch League, the Battle for LA. Now, the Valiant were still on the road to full recovery after their abysmal start to the season, and in all honesty, the Gladiators were heavy favorites coming into this series. Thankfully though, both teams always seem to play at their peak when they face each other, and this match delivered some great moments.
Speaking of great moments, China has long been known as the most unorthodox region of Overwatch play, and there's no better example of that than when the Hangzhou Spark and the Guangzhou Charge faced off in Stage 2.
Yeah, these Chinese teams, LaFon, they certainly play Overwatch, I'll give them that.
They don't just play Overwatch, Paul, they kind of win at it too.
Keeping with the theme of regional rivalries, but upping the production value, the Overwatch League left Burbank for the first time in its regular season history and made its way into Dallas, Texas for the first ever homestand. Honestly, if you somehow have the time, go back and watch the whole weekend, if only for the unmatched energy exerted by the Texan crowd. Whatever you do though, make sure to watch the Yi vs. Ha match as the Dallas Fuel takes on the Houston Outlaws, for there are few matches that will ever have that kind of crowd impact and involvement in esports.
It really, really bodes well for the future, Paul, and honestly, it's one of my favorite moments of Season 2.
And Stage 2 had some pretty amazing moments overall, but like we were saying earlier, it was really the San Francisco Shock's stage. Looking for revenge after losing to the Titans in the finals from Stage 1, they came out swinging. They didn't even drop a map, LaFon. Overwatch history was made. The first ever golden stage to be played was taken by the Shock.
A ton of credit to Krusty too, who was the first coach ever to have a perfect stage, 10-0 in Season 1 with the Boston Uprising, and then also became the first coach to go completely undefeated in a stage as well.
Fantastic performances from the Shock notwithstanding though, the Fuel did give us a glimpse into the future of Overwatch League with that homestand and the genuine excitement that it holds. The highlight was definitely the fans and the sheer exuberance they showed during the weekend.
As happy as the Fuel yeed this stage, though, we do have to turn to the sad ha of the Houston Outlaws. The Outlaws org did struggle mightily this stage, and while it's not all their fault, 0-7 looks good for no one. At least they didn't die to a Torb hammer kill.
I mean, that's, as long as you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel like that, you're still doing okay in my mind.
The end of Stage 2 is a mirror for Stage 1, though, and the two best teams in the league in the best GOATs versus GOATs. Do yourself a favor and watch this game too. San Francisco comes out on top, 4-2, ending their golden stage in the most appropriate fashion possible.
Going into Stage 3 though, coming off the Shock's golden stage, they went straight into a map 5 nail-biter for the very first match of Stage 3. The San Francisco Shock faced off against a revitalized Atlanta Reign and barely managed to keep their footing. While it wasn't really terribly surprising that the series was close, with Atlanta on the rise and Shock likely having taken a bit of a break after their Stage 2 win, you can kind of look at this match as a bit of foreshadowing for what Stage 3 would bring.
And it would bring no shortage of insanity and upsets, as the Shock would soon find out. But absolutely no one could have predicted that the team to defeat them and end their near-record winning streak would be the previously 0-7 Houston Outlaws. Saying to hell with this whole GOATs thing and embracing DPS play, the team who went winless in Stage 2 would end up defeating the Stage 2 champions.
And that wouldn't be the only upset of the stage either, and the next upset would look eerily similar. The Los Angeles Valiant versus the Vancouver Titans pitted the winless Stage 1 team against the Stage 1 champions, who were thus far undefeated in the regular season. Unfortunately for the Titans, Stage 3 was a different beast altogether, with a new variance in the meta that caught the Titans off guard. But Valiant, with some new additions to their roster and a great read on the addition of Sombra and DPS, were able to pull a fast one and hand the Titans their first loss of the regular season.
Now, while the general spectatorship and pro player base may have been tired of GOATs, the top teams certainly weren't going to give up playing such a strong composition. Sombra got more play inside the 3-3, and even noted Sombra haters in the San Francisco Shock gave it a run. Stage 3 had the most DPS play in Season 2 to that point, and new faces made it to the top of the standings off the back of it. Valiant with their roster swaps, but quietly, the Shanghai Dragons became a threat with a triple DPS look they brought forward. On top of that, another Chinese team was showing what they were made of as the Spark finally came into their own and started making a push for a final playoff appearance.
Stage 3 had yet another big sad moment for another 0-7 squad though, with the Toronto Defiant. But you know what? All I'm looking at is that Torbjorn 1v1 between Mangachu and Defran, and they got that win, so it's not a winless stage, damn it.
Yeah, no, I'll take that any day of the week, right? So, all right, quick. Guess who was in the stage finals this time?
Is it Titans and Shock again?
Well, you got the Shock correct, but the Dragons made a surprise appearance in their final after dominating their side of the bracket. With an insane Widow and Fire play from DM and Ding, they actually ended up beating the second, third, and first seed in the playoffs.
And although San Francisco Shock did bring it back and managed to tie up the series, they nearly pulled off the reverse sweep. The Dragons would close out Dorado and close out the last stage final ever in the Overwatch League.
The end of Stage 3 was also time to say farewell to GOATs, as Rollock would debut in the next stage, another era of Overwatch in the history books.
But now we're into the new era, Lafon. Rollock featured heavily in Stage 4, but there were also a ton of teams gunning for a playoff spot, and with no stage playoffs in the last quarter of the season, things were about to light up. While the top 3 of the league were out of reach, every other spot from playoffs to play-ins was available and up for grabs.
Now, Stage 4 is currently fresh in our minds, Paul, so I'm sure you can all guess which the first notable face-off is going to be, as it pitted the highest benefactor of Rollock against our #1 team in the league. If you had asked me in March how I thought the Washington Justice versus the Vancouver Titans match would go, I would have fallen asleep halfway through the question. But Rollq is a new beast, and it unleashed the monster that is Corey when he isn't forced to play Zarya.
And after the Stage 2 finals, you had to pencil in any match where the Titans and Shock would face off. And it makes sense, right? While there were no standings to play for this late for these two teams, the fire of competition still burned brightly, and it showed that they wanted to take each other down. This was a bloody Map 5 set that proved both these teams would still rock in a post-GOATS world.
All right, what do we have next? Oh, it's the Titans again. This time, though, this is a match you had to call at the start of Season 2 as being one to watch as they faced off against the New York Excelsior. That said, when it rolled around, there was some fear that the match would be, to borrow one of my Canadianisms again, a gong show, with teams resting their best players ahead of the playoffs. Never fear, it was also a 5-map affair and was just as fantastic as expected when people were predicting it as the regular season matchup to watch.
And as I said before, one match you can always predict to be a spectacular show is the Battle for LA, and there was no better way to round out the 2019 season than having it take place at the Los Angeles Valiant's homestand. The crowd was electric, the teams were fueled by playoff implications still pressing down on both of them, and it led to a fun and explosive match to watch. And after the very last match of the regular season, having those playoff implications, that would be it for some teams. Stage 4 would end their journey in 2019, but for some of them, it gives us a preview of how they're going to look heading into the playoffs.
Paul, these moments and others all led us here to the end of the 2019 regular season. The very high highs, such as the Titan Stage 1 closeout, the Dragons' first ever win, the sheer elation of the Shock as they closed out the Golden Stage, to the extreme lows of Fusions and Jake both having their emotions explode on stage, to the human moments of Dogman yelling at the crowd or OG crying in happiness at the Dallas homestand. We obviously can't capture every moment, but these were just a few of our favorites that we feel tell the story of this season. So now it's your turn. What is your 2019 Overwatch League story?
Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, there is a button for that down below, along with some cool stuff you should check out in the description. If you didn't like the video, leave us a comment. We're always looking to improve, but either way, make sure you tune in to Elohel Esports for more Overwatch content. Shock promised after Season 1 that they were building for the future, and they more... Oh. Okay. I've been reading it wrong for the last 4 takes. God, I love that I'm a bot, lafon.